Welcome to the Hurdle Podcast. We got a full barn today. We got Bailey, we got Luke, and we're just going to recap some bowl games because we haven't talked about any of the games so far, at least on the podcast. We've all talked like individually, but like in the podcast, haven't talked about it. We're not going over every game because frankly, during bowl season, we can never get every game in. This isn't NFL Red Zone where it's every touchdown from every game. We watch whatever's on and whatever the most interesting. So we'll just go over most either games we watched or upsets against like ranked opponents and any just big performances. Because I'm eyeing the kid from Western Kentucky. We're going to talk about him for a minute. But let's start out UAB taking on BYU in the Independence Bowl. UAB pulls the upset off against 13 BYU 31-28. Again, I love seeing that. I hate BYU, so I love seeing that. But yeah, it was an entertaining game. Both teams had the run game really going well, especially BYU.
And yeah, both teams, like you said, run game was just popping off the chain. You had Algier at almost 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, McBride on the other side with 183 yards. But UAB really shined passing the ball, whereas BYU, they just couldn't get a completion when it seemed like over 10 yards. So, yeah, Hopkins, the difference was Hopkins and Romney's play in this game. And UAB just had better quarterback play, which determines 30% of games most of the time.
Yep. Quarterback play, UAB. 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, both guys. I mean, you got 6.5 yards per carry on one end, 7.1 on the other end. They're both running it all over the place. But in the end, it was the quarterback play. It was the touchdowns by Hopkins compared to no touchdowns by Romney. And then, I mean, it was pretty similar quarterback play, some pretty similar running back play, and they only won by 3. So it pretty much turned out the way you would think. Ends on a field goal. You get just a few more yards, you get that kick, and then the defense holds for like the last 7 minutes, and you get the win, which is a really big win for UAB. I mean, BYU is technically not a Power 5 school, but they're usually ranked in the 10 to 20 range. Independent school, pretty solid. They've had some nice NFL talent before and still do. So nice win for the Conference USA too as a conference. So good for them.
Yeah, for sure. And then you look at that, like BYU going to the Big 12 here in a few years. That's going to be exciting when these teams do switch these conferences around, because then you're going to be getting like these BYUs and these Cincinnati's into bowl games that they otherwise wouldn't be in. I mean, Cincinnati was lucky this year, but I mean, in the future, it could be very huge for these teams. Next game, the Boca Raton Bowl, Western Kentucky, App State. Really, the only reason we're talking about this is the man Bailey Zappe. Zappe,
yeah.
There we go. He goes off. They win 59-38. He throws for 422 and 6 touchdowns, literally breaking Joe Burrow's records, which is insane coming from a kid that plays at Western Kentucky. But yeah, that's the only reason we wanted to talk about this game.
I mean, the records are just, you look at the season stats and they're absolutely through the roof. Like, it's ridiculous, the amount of touchdowns, just the efficiency. Coming into these games, you know they're going to throw the ball at least 40, 45 times, and you still can't stop it. It's pretty impressive. Stearns, his go-to target too, also had a huge game with 3 touchdowns himself and almost 200 yards. So, yeah, Western Kentucky, I mean, that offense was just so potent this year. It's an impressive feat that they accomplished.
Yeah, huge game for Zappe. Anytime you can throw 47 passes and complete 70% of them, you're having a pretty good day. And you're throwing on average 9 yards downfield. You got sacked 1 time. He's just chucking it 6 touchdowns, 422 yards. They had 200-yard receivers in this game. This was just fantastic. And I don't care if they're like, they're in the Conference USA, so it doesn't matter. Burrow did it against better talent, but Burrow did it with like 3 first-round pick, 3 top 2-round receivers, a full NFL line, an NFL tight end, and a first-round NFL running back that same year too. So there's excuses for both sides. Great feat for Zappe. This game helps his draft stock. He goes to the Senior Bowl. We'll see where he ends up coming out of the Conference USA. And this Western Kentucky team also beat that BYU team in the conference, not BYU. The team that beat BYU, UAB, in the Conference USA Championship. So a couple of really big wins in a row and big games for Zappe. So good for them as well.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to say, Zappe going to the Senior Bowl. All the records are going to obviously boost his draft stock. Not as much as like a Joe Burrow, obviously, because no one knew about Joe Burrow until he got to LSU. And then Coach O really turned his career around. So we're not saying he's going to be the number one pick. He's not going to come out of nowhere. But, maybe a team later in the draft, 4th, 5th round, maybe 6 or 7, you just take a shot on him.
Yeah, most definitely.
For sure.
Because you can't teach arm talent. Speaking of these Conference USA teams doing very well, let's go to a conference that didn't go well. Luke, you have the floor after I introduced the game. The Birmingham Bowl, Houston beats SEC Auburn 17-13. Go ahead, Luke.
Man, the SEC. So they're dominant, and they're probably the reason why we're going to be talking about expanding the playoff later, because they have 2 teams in the national championship like usual. But man, the back end of the SEC was terrible this last bowl season. Obviously, Auburn loses that game to a non-Power 5 school in Houston. Then you have Missouri losing to Army West Point, a military school, in the bowl game. Florida loses to UCF, who is on like their 3rd string quarterback. Their starting quarterback, who could be in the NFL in the future, is transferring. And then Florida loses that game. They had a brutal season. They're going through coaching changes. We're going to get into even more SEC disappointment later on too. But through this early section, it was just looking so brutal. You're not just losing to any teams. You're like losing to UCF, and everyone's claiming you're not even the best team in Florida, which is not a good sign. And then especially not good for recruiting. And then you're losing to military schools in bowl games when you're supposed to have the best recruiting base of all the conferences to a military school that only recruits military guys. This can't happen. It's not really acceptable for the SEC standards, but I love seeing it. And it felt really good until I watched the playoff semifinals.
Yeah. Not wrong at all.
Yeah, I don't really have much to say about this game. I think Luke kind of hit it right on the head, like as far as the SEC conference goes. As far as this game goes between Houston and Auburn, I thought Auburn was going to win. They were just coming off that marginal loss to Alabama, who is now in the national championship yet again. So I thought, Bigsby was all right, but Houston just played kind of an all-around game. We knew it was going to be two very defensive teams going head-to-head here, and it performed exactly how we thought it would. 30 points total. So that definitely probably smashed the under in this game. So yeah, Toon played well, and Bigsby was good on the one side, and that's really what it came down to, is quarterback play yet again.
Yeah, I'm not gonna add anything to that. We'll jump to the next one. Speaking of a military school winning a bowl game, the team that never throws it, Air Force, beats Louisville 31-28. I don't think this is really a surprise to us. I think we all picked Air Force, but at the same time, it's also like you have an ACC caliber team in Louisville losing to a military school in Air Force. It's just not a good look for these conferences when they draw either a military school or a non-Power 5, and they just get shown up, because really Louisville didn't do anything crazy for me to go, oh, that was really close. And I know I said Air Force didn't throw the ball a lot. 9 of 10, 252 and 2 touchdowns. Their leading receiver had 172. Like, for a team that runs the ball, they were throwing it all over Louisville. And that's maybe that's why they got the win. They were so shell shocked by the way the Air Force came out to start this game that maybe they just couldn't recover, because they were down 2 scores at the half.
Yeah, so I actually do remember picking Louisville in this game, just because I thought the quarterback play would do it for them. And Cunningham for Louisville didn't play super well. He actually got outplayed by a quarterback that never throws the ball, like you mentioned. Zeke Daniels. So shout out to Zeke. If I'm saying it right. 9 of 10 for 252 yards and 2 touchdowns. You want to talk about efficient? How about a 368 QBR, which is out of all the stat sheets. Their leading rusher only averaged 3.9 yards a carry. So really unacceptable that they lost that game. Louisville's never been good at defense, really. And then, I mean, they lose by 3. Their kicker missed the field goal. The Air Force kicker made a field goal. That's a difference too. I mean, they just lost in every phase of the game pretty much. And their quarterback that I predicted would win it for them with his talents did not show up in this game. So tough loss for Louisville, but another big win for the military schools. So good for them. They keep rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I also picked Louisville. I think it's dope that Air Force won this game. Just from the point, like the stats tell the story, like you said, Luke. Like, I have never heard of 9 completions and 252 yards off 9 completions. Like, that's absolutely berserk.
25 yards per attempt.
Yeah, it's unheard of. And yeah, like you said, I thought Cunningham was going to be more of an X factor in this game just because of that dual threat ability that he has. I figured he would be able to dominate a little more, but Air Force drew up a great game plan, and they surprised, I think, all of us here by throwing the ball extremely efficiently. Even though they only threw it 10 times, it didn't matter because they scored most of their points off of passing touchdowns. So Louisville really tried. They really had to do whatever they could just to stay in this game all the way through. I mean, they were down 14 at half, and it looked like they might be able to push at the end, but just didn't have enough gas in the tank at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. All right. The curse of the SEC continues as Mississippi State, Mike Leach and Mississippi State put up 7 points. That's it. A Mike Leach offense putting up 7 points as Texas Tech defeats Mississippi State 34-7. Really, it was pretty much just all around Texas Tech being more of a complete offense, and they showed up defensively because holding an offense like this to 7 points is insane, especially for a Big 12 defense, because last time I checked, that conference does not play defense.
Yeah, you're right about that. A team that is an air raid team because they're led by Mike Leach, Mississippi State throws 53 passes. They only get 290 yards. That's not efficient. Their leading rusher gets 6.9 yards per carry. They give him 9 carries. Like, it's just not thinking logically. I know you're an air raid team, but you got to do something different. They gave up 2 runners that averaged over 5.5 yards a carry. One had 80 yards, one had 107 yards. Texas Tech ran it all over Mississippi State's defense. And Mike Leach was bragging before the game. I saw some interviews and some clips on Instagram and stuff like that with Mike Leach, super confident, like, oh, watch what we're going to do here. And then kind of like what Lane Kiffin did before he went out and got hosed by Bama. Just not a good look at all when you do that before losing. So good for Texas Tech. This is the best thing I've seen Texas Tech do since they gave the Seahawks Jordan Brooks, who's starting to look really good, just set a Seahawks franchise record for tackles in the season. So I'm liking that. And this is looking good too because they just beat another SEC team. So I'm liking what I'm seeing here. It's a good theme. It's going to come to a harsh ending here in a minute, but we're looking good so far with our SEC run.
Yeah. When you think Mike Leach, of course you think over 45 pass attempts a game, air raid offense, and just let it rip. They really just got absolutely manhandled in this game, really, but all the way around through Texas Tech. Texas Tech, like you guys said, played all around football. Fantastic run game. And when you shut down a team like how they did, you're ending up getting great field position most of the time, which makes it super easy on your offense. And then that offense has to come, Mississippi State's offense has to come back on the field. Of course, they're super tired because they just ran 4 pass plays, most likely. And yeah, it's just kind of repeat and refresh for Texas Tech after that point. And I don't know, boring. It was a pretty boring game to watch. And Texas Tech just kind of thrashed them, especially in that third quarter there when they just put the icing on the cake.
Yeah, a lot of blowouts to this point so far.
Yeah, not a lot of very competitive bowl games. We might get a few here in a minute, but West Virginia, Minnesota in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. Minnesota goes out on top. So Big Ten school getting a win here. 18-6. Again, nothing super impressive. Minnesota's running back goes off for 144 and a touchdown out here, looking like another Minnesota running back, Dalvin Cook. With that kind of stat line. I know Bailey enjoys that, but I mean, passing the ball, neither of these teams really did that well. It was just more of a complete run game out of Minnesota, and somehow a Big 12 school in West Virginia not being able to put up points.
Yeah, this was pretty much a battle of which quarterback's going to suck more, honestly. West Virginia quarterback, 58% completion, 140 and a pick, 5 sacks. And then Tanner Morgan, the 6th-year starter for Minnesota, threw 13 passes, had 109 yards and a pick, sacked twice. Like you said, they ran all over him. They had a rusher with 144 yards, Kai Thomas, and then their backup, Marquise Irving, had 129 yards. Both averaged 6.8 yards per carry. And this is without their future NFL talent running back, Mohamed Ibrahim. I follow closely because I like following running backs in college to the NFL. He was out week 1 in that Ohio State game and missed the season. They still ran all over him with their 2 backups, dominated them on the ground, and just shut them down defensively. Every time I tuned into this game, because it wasn't super great offensively, they just, every single time, it was just a 3 and out. Every single time. There weren't a ton of turnovers, just 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, over and over again. People that bet the under are loving life right now with this game. It was a defensive one and a running game, and Minnesota all around in both trenches dominated this game and deserved to get this win.
Yeah, I don't have much more to say after that. I mean, like you said, the quarterbacks basically canceled themselves out. So that's who can get the running game going. And Minnesota established their running game early and often, which of course allowed them to control clock, give their defense rest, while West Virginia's defense was really just working the entire game to get stops, and they just couldn't. Really in the second quarter was where Minnesota kind of put their mark in this game. Like you said, with Kai Thomas, 144 yards rushing. And then, 380-pound lineman scored in this game, 2-yard rushing touchdown for Minnesota. So that's kind of cool to see. Love to see big men eating in the red zone. It's just kind of a cool strategy when you see Vita Vea do it in the NFL now. They're catching. Deion Dawkins was getting targets double teamed. He's the left tackle for Buffalo. It's just kind of a cool little strategy to implement in the red zone, and it works. So you saw William Perry do it in Chicago, the fridge. So
yeah. And also, last weekend when the Seahawks played the Lions, they targeted 3. They only had 2 tight ends on their active roster, so they had 3 big man targets in the red zone, and they caught one of them. So
there you go.
Too.
So it's just a cool little strategy to implement, especially in a bowl game. It was a cool little imprint.
Yeah. So Holiday Bowl gets canceled. UCLA NC State gets canceled. A lot of NC State people were not happy about that. It is what it is. It is what it is. If you're not going to follow the rules, whatever. Alamo Bowl, Oklahoma takes on Oregon. Bob Stoops comes out of retirement for 1 game and wipes the floor with Oregon, 47-32. Not much defense, a lot of points. Sounds like a Big 12, Pac-12 game, pretty much.
Yep. Caleb Williams, swan song for Oklahoma as he's now in the transfer portal. 21-27, 3 touchdowns, no picks. They dominate. Ran the ball all over him. 2 running backs averaging over 10 yards a carry is unacceptable. An embarrassment for Oregon. I guess Anthony Brown, the quarterback for Oregon, stat line looks okay. But if you watch the first half and then stopped watching at halftime like I did, then you would have thought that he might get cut from the team, honestly, because he looked so bad. in the first half. They ran the ball really well, which they've done all season, but their problem has been through the air. They got an athletic quarterback, but he just hasn't been good with the arm all year. And he was not great again in the first half. They sort of kind of tried to come back in the second half. I mean, they were down 30-3 at half, it looks like. And then they came all the way back to 42-30 or 47-32. It's a pretty big swing. They tried, but they were in a massive hole and really didn't stand a chance. So it was pretty much a lot of garbage time yards there.
Yeah. Oklahoma put on a ransacking of Oregon in the second quarter. Outscored them 24-0, which basically sealed the game right then and there, because like we've seen in the 2 games against Utah and ever since CJ Verdell went down, Oregon really hasn't had an elite offense by any means. Dye's a great running back, and that's no shot against him, because he's still an NFL talent, most likely, going in the later rounds. But yeah, Oregon just set their mark. I don't believe they turned the ball over the entire game. Caleb Williams only had 6 incompletions, and they really just thrashed him throughout. And then, like you said, with Brown, the quarterback, the arm struggled, especially really late in the year. I mean, you highlight the 2 games against Utah, and like you said, the stats are just they were playing catch up the entire third quarter, and you have to sling it when you're down 27 and it's the last game of the year. Let it fly. So but yeah, like we said, Oklahoma was just too much of a threat offensively. They really just kind of ran them off the field in the second quarter, and then it was smooth sailing from there.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Cheez It Bowl. Finally, we get a close bowl game. 19 Clemson taking on Iowa State. Clemson squeaks it out 20-13. I mean, I say squeak it out. They were up 26 going into the fourth. They just kind of had to, bend and not break, and that's what they did. They get the win, another Dabo Bowl win. I mean, not much else to say. Great. The defense for Clemson looked really good in this game. They held a very explosive, at times, Iowa State offense in pretty well in check, especially, 6 points going into the fourth. But yeah, classic Dabo Bowl game, except it's this time not against Alabama.
Yeah. I've been waiting for something big from DJU all year for Clemson. I haven't gotten it. Didn't really get it in this game either. 1 touchdown, or no, not 1 touchdown. Sorry, I read that wrong. 1 pick, no touchdowns. Not a great game for him. They ran the ball okay, but it was the defense that won them the game again, like they have all year. They sort of kind of bent at the end of this game. It was a really close game all throughout the first half, 6-3. Then they go up 20-3. Then they let them back 20-13. Then it came down to the wire. You really expected to maybe see something more from Brock Purdy, because he's been rumored before in the past to be like, maybe this guy could be an NFL quarterback. I don't really see it anymore. And then, of course, they didn't have Breece Hall, who's going to be in the NFL. I don't think he declared this year, but he might have. I think he's a senior. He's their best player. He's one of the better running backs in college football. He opted out. There's a lot of opt-outs from star players, especially in some of these bigger bowls with Power 5 teams, guys that are going into the NFL. So he opts out of this bowl game to look towards the NFL, and they can't get anything going on the ground. Their leading rusher averaged 3 yards a carry. Their backup 2.8. They couldn't get anything going offensively. And the late effort was nice, but Clemson's defense too much in this one for a team without their best player.
Yeah, Clemson was absolutely filthy defensively this game, even without Venables, who's making his way to Oklahoma as we speak. But yeah, they were just all over the place throughout this entire game, except for a little, like you said, the little shake up there in the fourth where they kind of let Iowa State just slowly crawl back in it. But yeah, they've carried this team all year. And it's just how it is with Clemson in these past few, really just this entire 2021 season, like literally since Notre Dame, where they lose 10-3, if I'm not mistaken, to Notre Dame to start the year. And that's really just been the tail of the tape all year for Clemson, is limited offense, ridiculous defense. And that just proved itself again. Like you said, Ukulele, I don't know what to say. He has all the talent in the world to be a special talent, a special quarterback, really be a number one overall pick. He has that kind of talent and arm strength and just the physical gifts, but something is off at Clemson where he can't activate that, or he just couldn't get in the zone to activate it this year. And I don't know what this. I don't know if he needs to go into more of an air raid style of offense. A USC transfer would be very interesting to see him play under Lincoln Riley. Even though, did they get a transfer? I don't think they've gotten a transfer. Did
Go
they?
there, rumored, but
Who?
Caleb Williams has been rumored to go there, but they haven't gotten anyone yet.
Okay. I mean, if he really wants to leave,
I mean, I was gonna say not Oklahoma. USC's poaching all of Oklahoma's big recruits and one was the 5-star quarterback. So
Yeah,
I mean,
they poached the 5-star QB, but I don't know how quick he'll be into it. I mean, if he's as good as they say he is as a recruit, he could be in there real quick, especially with Riley, but we'll have to see.
he's gonna be a freshman this year, right?
Yeah, true
He'll be a
freshman. Actually, he's a 2020 recruit. I don't think he comes in unless he enrolls early. Then I don't think he'll be in for a couple years.
Okay. But I mean, maybe a transfer over there would be interesting just so we can see him throw the ball and then basically just run the offense that Kyler Murray ran and then get the QB draws going. He'd be more of a QB power kind of guy and not more of a QB draw, but and run that style of offense, which was super successful for Kyler, got him a number one overall draft pick. So maybe something there. But yeah, Clemson dominated defensively.
Yeah.
Like you said, Iowa State, no Brees Hall, which is a huge loss. I think if they had Brees Hall, I think they maybe win this game. But he's securing his talent for the NFL. And when you're not playing for the national championship, I don't blame you. So yeah.
Yeah, and just one last thing on DJU is crazy that he doesn't do this against weak ACC defenses, and they got a 5-star quarterback coming in next year who balled out in the America game, Cade Club, just a couple of days ago. And I mean, if he doesn't watch his back, he could have his job stolen. Just like, oh man, I can't remember his name, but Trevor Lawrence is a true freshman, was supposed to redshirt, was in his redshirt year, and he outplayed the starter there. He ended up transferring to Missouri, never did anything, but he took his job. Could have a career.
Bryant, right?
Yes, Kelly Bryant.
Kelly Bryant, yeah.
Had his job taken by Lawrence as a true freshman. So we could see something like that if he's not careful.
Yeah, true. It's interesting because, you get like Watson and Lawrence, and they've rolled in this offense, but you also got to think I believe both were freshmen when they started. I know Lawrence was. Watson might have been too. So you almost wonder if, having Lawrence, get that start over Ungale, if that may be slowing down his progress. But it'll be interesting. Like you said, they're bringing in a 5-star. So it's going to be an interesting competition. He might transfer. He might have to, just like Brian did.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of transfers nowadays. You got over 1,000 people in the portal at the moment. People are transferring at will right now. They don't even have to be getting benched to be transferring at this moment, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. All right. The only game that happened in a baseball stadium, Maryland, Virginia Tech in the Pinstripe Bowl in New York. Maryland beats Virginia Tech 54-10. Not much to say here. Talia Tagovailoa looked okay. Only four incompletions. He looked really solid. It was just too much to handle. VTech could not stop Maryland's offense.
Yeah, Maryland dominates. Like you said, Talia Tagovailoa, been waiting for him to do something all year. I've seen predictions of him being one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten there. Haven't seen it all year, but he made some throws in this game that I was saying, dang, he kind of looks like the right-handed version of his brother in college a little bit, but not consistent enough yet. See what he does next year. If he throws balls next year like he did in this game, he could start getting some draft hype, and maybe we could have two Tagovailoas at quarterback in the NFL, depending where that all goes. But yeah, slaughter by Maryland. Not a ton to say about this game other than Talia.
Yeah, same thing here. Maryland really showed their big playability early. 92-yard punt return touchdown to start the scoring in this game, and then they answer right back from a field goal with a one-play 70-yard touchdown, 22-second drive. And that was really kind of the tail of the tape the whole time. Maryland took their yards in chunks all game. They scored 14 points that wasn't even from their offense, which their defense and their special teams but outscored Virginia Tech in this game. So Maryland just with a huge statement game. They ran the table with Virginia Tech.
All right. Well, the Wasabi Fenway Bowl gets canceled for COVID between SMU and Virginia. I mean, I wouldn't want to play in Boston either. Pitt playing Michigan State. Sorry, Bailey, I had to. It had to be done. Had to be done.
Would have been a better game than Maryland, Virginia Tech. I can guarantee you that.
I mean, at least our game happened. At least the game in Yankee Stadium happened. That's all I'm gonna say.
Like 4 people watched.
But all right. So one of the games that we previewed a lot and had a lot to say was Pitt, Michigan State. Because when we talked about it, we were under the impression that Kenny Pickett and Kenneth Walker would be playing. But like a lot of top talent, they sit out the bowl game. Michigan State digs themselves in a hole early. They get down by 10 or 11. No, they get down by 11, excuse me. They win the game by 10. Really, it was just both teams' ability to adapt. Because Michigan State's been this run-heavy team all year. They aired it out. 50 pass attempts from their quarterback, Thorne, 354 and 3 touchdowns. They really just had to switch up their whole scheme because of Kenneth Walker not being there. That's how much of a difference this guy makes, because it's not like when we talk about Michigan State, it's like, oh, the air raid. They're an air raid team. No, it's a power running game, and then you set it up with the play action and throw it. You saw a completely different side of Michigan State here. And it was, I mean, again, it was an okay game to watch, but I think we can all agree it would have been more fun with Kenny Pickett and Kenneth Walker playing in it.
Yeah, somehow 2 offensive juggernauts that didn't show much defensively throughout the year hit the under on this game. Like you said, I mean, just not much going on offensively all around. I mean, the quarterback play for Pittsburgh without Pickett, efficient-ish, but not much going on there. They couldn't really run the ball at all. Michigan State's leading rusher averaged 1.5 yards a carry, so it's pretty pathetic. They didn't have. You're missing 2 Heisman caliber offensive talents, which whether they play good or not, whether the team wins or not, they're always going to be fun. And even NFL, it'll even draw in like NFL enthusiasts or like people that love scouting and stuff like that. When you don't have that, it's like, you not only don't know who the guys are, but the play is severely lowered. But I will give credit, Peyton Thorne, quarterback from Michigan State. I've criticized all year, said he's the weakest link. He had to step up in this game. He took on a rather weak Pittsburgh pass defense, but he threw for 354 yards and 3 touchdowns. He gets his team a win in a New Year's 6 bowl game here. So congratulations, Peyton Thorne. But still, both offenses were not really worth tuning into for a lot of more casual fans liking.
Yeah, for me, this is one of the rare times where I've seen playing catch up actually work as an advantage, except for the 17 times a year the Steelers do it, and half of those work out. Michigan State 21 in the fourth, that'll do it right there. That's really just the dagger that really killed Pittsburgh. Their defense just didn't have enough gas in the tank to hold up and come fourth quarter. But I think my takeaway from Pittsburgh, at least, it just showed how valuable Kenny Pickett was to this team. Like when you take away the best player at the most important position, you could argue all year long. It's so demoralizing, and they only had a week to adjust, not even, and you just lose out on all that talent, all that playmaking ability to even set up the run, because they have to do it the inverse way. The pass sets up in the run in Pittsburgh because you have to commit to the pass by playing a bunch of DBs. So and same thing with Michigan State. It's just they're a more well-rounded team, so it was easier for them to adapt. Thorne while he doesn't play great against top competition, Pittsburgh is not a top defense, even though they're ranked 12th in the nation. That is almost surely 80% Kenny Pickett. So yeah, they're just more well-rounded. It was easier for them to adapt, and they really took advantage of a more experienced coaching staff and just a better all-around team in the fourth quarter. They were more physically dominant there and really asserted themselves in the fourth, which is why they won.
Yeah. Next game, the good old Duke's Mayo Bowl. The one instance where your best player playing doesn't matter. South Carolina wins 38-21 against North Carolina, and Sam Howell played in this game, and North Carolina still didn't win. So we'll get into later people not playing. We're gonna talk about it, but when you do play in it, you do have to play good. I don't know if Sam Howell didn't get that memo, but you do have to play good when you decide to play in a bowl game because people are watching. But yeah, really, other than Howell having a terrible game, Harris for South Carolina ran all over North Carolina's defense, dang near 200 yards on 31 carries and a touchdown. And their leading receiver had 160 and 2 touchdowns. So it was just the more explosive offense prevailed in this game.
Yeah, I mean, South Carolina jumps out to an explosive start. You got a 69-yard touchdown for the first score. Then you got a 66-yard touchdown for the second score. And then all of a sudden at the end of the first quarter, you're up 18-0 on this team. And you're relying on Sam Howell, who's been a great quarterback throughout his college career, to come through. He gets sacked 4 times. He only throws for 205 yards and a touchdown. They don't run the ball super well. South Carolina runs the ball all over them. And this is after their starting quarterback goes 9-9 for 160 yards and a touchdown because of those 2 big plays. And they have Gene Bell, who caught both of those 2 touchdowns, the 69 and 66-yard touchdown, had 159 yards and 2 touchdowns in the game. And then they run all over them to close it out. So they did what they had to, early explosive plays to get the big lead. Defense holds up throughout the game, and then they run the ball really well to close it out. Really a great game all around. And yeah, congratulations, South Carolina. They kind of broke the curse there for the SEC against North Carolina, who has been one of the bigger disappointments really this year in college football.
Yeah. I'm a little confused because I didn't fully watch this game on how Sam Howell only throws 20 pass attempts when with 7 minutes left in the third quarter, or excuse me, 9 minutes left in the third quarter, you're down 19 and you only have 20 pass attempts. I don't really understand the play calling. You got to let that thing flip and fly when you're down that much, and you have to score quick and in a hurry. And UNC only had 21 minutes of possession this whole game. South Carolina dominated, like you said, through the run with 31 carries because they're trying to milk clock, protect that lead, and they did it successfully. I think it showed how much of an impact. I just talked about Kenny Pickett on Pittsburgh, like Javonte Williams and Michael Carter last year, because Sam Howell was absolutely fantastic last year when he had a run game. This year, no run game really whatsoever, except in that Wake Forest game, I believe, which they won, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I think they beat Wake.
I'm thinking of Pittsburgh. I think they did beat Wake Forest.
They beat one of the 2.
Yeah, it was like 54-51.
Yeah, something insane. Yeah, it was
also
super
more DME Brown, 2 NFL receivers too. I mean,
yeah, DME Brown, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Not as many weapons this year, and Howell just kind of flopped all year, and he did it again in this game. And South Carolina's just be able to control clock when it hit the third quarter, get 2 field goals in the fourth to just pad the lead a little bit, and that was the icing on the cake in this game. That's really all they had to do, was really just contain Sam Howell, which they did to a great degree. Why he only threw 20 pass attempts, I don't know.
Yeah, when you want to see that much out of a guy that's, for the one quarterback that is playing other than Malik Willis, which game we didn't talk about, they put up over 50 points in their bowl game. But for arguably a quarterback that needs the most help to get his draft stock back up, he just didn't play well. I mean, that's what happens, I guess, when you do play in the bowl game. That's one of the risks you take other than injury. That's another big risk you take. All right. Music City Bowl classic. It goes to overtime. Purdue wins controversially. We'll talk about it. They win 48-45. I mean, when your quarterback throws for 534 and 5 touchdowns, that's hard to beat. But Tennessee almost did it. And really, they should have done it. All because the officials blew the play a little early, you could argue. Tennessee doesn't get the touchdown, and that's how they lose it. It's as simple as that. You can say what you want about the officiating. It's whatever. Purdue gets the win, but it brings up the question of when plays are called dead. It's just it's a tough tightrope these officials walk.
Yeah, that was a pretty rough play there, officiating wise. Obviously, what happened is the receiver catches like a little mid screen. He's coming horizontally across the line there on like the 2. He catches it, tries to turn upfield, gets tackled up high a little bit at first. He's kind of in like a low crouch position. Then he scores, and then they blow the whistle, but they say that they called forward progress at like the 1. But they called the forward progress before they blew the whistle, and then everybody's freaking out because they were like, no, the knee's not down, but then they said it was because of the forward progress. I don't know. I mean, I could see why they called the forward progress, but the whistle timing didn't line up. I see why it's confusing too. But one thing I will say is, if you want to get mad about the officiating, which you definitely can, you also got to look at it this way. Tennessee's going in there full strength. They didn't have any stud guys like the bench in this game. Purdue had a potential top 10, top 5 pass rusher in George Karlaftis, who's not playing. He's going for the NFL draft. And a first or second round wide receiver in David Bell, who's also going to the NFL draft and isn't playing. And yet the quarterback, Aiden O'Connell, still throws for 534 and 5 touchdowns. Brock Thompson ended up being their leading receiver at 217 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. And I mean, I predicted Tennessee in our prediction show would win because of Hendon Hooker's play. The dude threw for 378, 5 touchdowns and no picks. So he played really well too. And they ran the ball much better. So that's why they were in this game as well. But a great finish. I mean, and whether you like the officiating or not, this was a fantastic game, super high scoring, offensive minded game. They were airing it out all over the place. Really fun to watch, and a crazy ending there. And I mean, it just makes for great bowl content. The SEC loses another close one to a shorthanded Big Ten team, spoiler makers, as they call them. Just another tough loss for the SEC and a great win for Purdue. I mean, because now you can go around saying that we beat an SEC team in a bowl game that was surging without our 2 best players. And then you can go into the NFL draft and watch 2 of your favorite players get drafted as well. It's a great end of the season for Purdue.
Yeah, I mean, I think Purdue's a rare breed as far as just the confidence that they had and just their ability to overcome. I don't think any of us thought Iowa was a great team when they were at 2, but they were at 2. They still beat them. And then to go in and beat Michigan State at home, but with just the style and the way they did it with trick plays and that kind of thing was extremely impressive. And now they go into this game, like you said, no David Bell, no Karlaftis, and they still throw five touchdowns. I know we had 3 picks, but still, like, it's still an impressive feat that they did, or what they did. Like you said, Tennessee, they fought really hard. I feel like offensively they were much more sound and well-rounded, but it was just Purdue's ability to chip away. Like, they scored 16 points in the second, where Tennessee didn't score a lick, and then Tennessee really had to keep pace with Purdue, I think, from there on out, because Purdue did get off to somewhat of a slow start, and then they really started to turn it up with huge play after huge play after huge play. 62-yard pass for a touchdown, 70-yard pass for a touchdown in the fourth alone. which the 71-yard one put them in the lead actually at 45-38. And you can talk about the fourth down stop all you want, but honestly, this was one of the better bowl games so all year. Over right near 1,300 yards of total offense in this game, which is absolutely absurd. So yeah, I was with Luke. I thought Tennessee was gonna win, but I mean, even when Purdue's shorthanded, they still find a way to get it done. So big shout out to them. They've had a really incredible year so far. It's just the cherry on top.
Yeah.
Absolutely, get to eat that pie, get to eat that up with the big old win at the end. The Las Vegas Bowl, yay! The typical Wisconsin game, 20-13 against Arizona State. Not much to say because I didn't watch it. It looked very boring on paper, and I just didn't care to watch Wisconsin play football.
Yeah, I watched it in the background on my small TV, which I have directly below my big TV, which I was playing Madden on because I couldn't be bothered to watch these two pathetic offenses. But it's another Pac-12 face plant in what was a brutal bowl season for the Pac-12 again. We don't need to talk about the Pac-12 because I don't know. Lincoln Riley is going to save them. Say whatever you want. I don't know. Who knows? We'll see. They'll probably be the only good team in the Pac-12 for the next 10 years anyways. Jaden Daniels for Arizona State, who's supposed to break out every single year and never has once, led by, why am I not remembering his last name? Herb. What's his name?
Herm Edwards.
Herm Edwards, who's supposed to lead this team to the promised land every year and never has, but at least they made a bowl game this year. Anyways, Jaden Daniels plays terribly, 159, 52%, a pick. They don't run the ball. Their leading rusher is Daniels with 19 runs, only gets 40 yards. Their top running back had 23 rushing yards. It was a defensive game. There was like a touchdown every quarter. And yeah, I mean, Daniels is coming back next year. Maybe he'll break out next year, but we still haven't seen it from Arizona State. So congratulations to Wisconsin, whose defense has been statistically the best in college football this year. And they started off really brutal this season. They had that tough loss to Notre Dame. They finish off the year pretty strong here, and they get a nice bowl win. So maybe they'll go into next year stronger and be a little bit more of a contender in the Big Ten like we usually see from them.
Yeah. I think the key here for Wisconsin was Brandon Allen. Even though I know he had no touchdowns, when you have 30 carries and 160 yards, if you can take 30 carries and still get over five a touch, that's pretty impressive. And he was really just this key to milk the clock the entire second half, because that's really what they did. Only a touchdown was scored in the entire second half. So, and that was Arizona State. It wasn't even Wisconsin. But yeah, I don't know. Daniels kind of gives me shades of Khalil Tate. Like he has super high potential. Like Arizona, if you guys remember Khalil Tate, but yeah, he just the ability he has, he's elusive, he can run, but the arm isn't any sort of major threat. He has the potential to be an NFL quarterback, maybe later on down the road, but it's just not really his time right now. I think next season, and there's always potential for mobile quarterbacks. There's always the high ceiling. So boring game. Wisconsin finishes out on top in a classic 2013. That's just such a Wisconsin score. So yeah.
Totally. Definitely a Wisconsin score.
Gotta love watching Wisconsin football. All right, we're gonna jump into the two college football playoff games. And if we're being honest, it wasn't a surprise to any of us. Bama goes out, beats Cincinnati 27-6. Maybe the way they did it in the run game was not what we expected, but nevertheless, Cincinnati just looked outmatched in this game. It sucks because, I mean, they showed flashes of, being really, they played okay. It's just the fact that they had to play Alabama. That's the Achilles heel to all of this. They had to play Bama. So yeah, Nick Saban coach team playing a non-power 5 school. Yeah, wasn't bound to go good. The fact they kept it within 21 is pretty good. And
Yeah.
they held Bryce Young kind of in check, even though he threw 3 touchdowns, but they just couldn't stop the run game. Bama gave them a completely different look than they've been doing all year. And I think that's what it came down to. It was just more superior coaching by Nick Saban.
This game proved to me exactly what I thought I knew, which is that Cincinnati's secondary is like insanely good. They have one guy out there who's going to be a top 15 pick in the NFL draft who hasn't given up a touchdown his entire collegiate career in 4 years starting, whose nickname is Sauce, which is amazing. And then they got Kobe Bryant on the other side. His name is Kobe Bryant, which is legendary. And he won defensive back of the year. So they have pretty much the 2 best defensive backs in the nation. And they held Bryce Young to 17 of 28 and 181 yards. Yeah, 3 touchdowns, but they got a pick off of him. Jamison Williams, who a lot of people have said is the best receiver in this year's draft class for Alabama, they held him to 7 catches for 62 yards and no touchdowns. Like, that's still a decent stat line, but like nobody has done that this year. Georgia didn't come anywhere close to doing that. The only thing that got them was the run game, because their defensive line, their front 7 doesn't match up to the size and the strength of all the 5 stars and 4 stars that Alabama has. And Desmond Ridder got sacked 6 times. Offensive line didn't hold up at all. He didn't stand a chance. So, yeah, I mean, Cincinnati did well, exactly what I thought they would in this game, but they just couldn't handle the size and the talent of Alabama in the trenches.
Yeah, I think both you guys said it really well. Yeah, I think starting off, I think Saban just shows another ability to adapt and renew just a brand new offense basically on the spot. And they knew, like you said, with Sauce Gardner and Bryant back there, that it's tough to throw the ball, even though you have, is it Jamison Williams?
Yeah.
But you have no Mechie. So you got to adapt a little bit. And boy, did they do that. Robinson with 204 yards on the ground, which is absolutely ridiculous. And we question Alabama's O-line. They've really stepped up to the plate here in these last few weeks. The game against Georgia, now this game here in the CFP, they're really stepping up to the plate. Of course, Evan Neal headlining that Alabama O-line. Ridder struggled, which I kind of figured would happen, just because it's Bama. Like, Saban is a defensive guru, and that is his expertise, is defense. So when I believe he's a senior, even though he's a senior quarterback, he's never seen any of these looks that Saban's going to go out there and give him. And he really struggled. I think he was at 33% on passes with an air yards over 5. It was check downs all night long from Ridder, and that just makes it so easy. All they got to do is just run up and tackle him. Like, it's really as simple as that. Which Cincinnati doesn't have fantastic receivers. Cincinnati really dominated through the run game for the large portion of this year, and that's where Alabama really excels, is stopping the run this year. Last year was more Surtain and that secondary really carrying the load for them. This year, it's that front 7. And they just matched up with Cincinnati way better than they could, or way better than Cincinnati matched up with Bama. So, yeah, like you said, they just had to stay away from the corners. And when you run for 204 yards on the ground, that makes it really easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. So Bama punched their ticket to the national championship. Now the next game determines who they play, Georgia, Michigan. And again, what we expected. Georgia rolls through Michigan 34-11. Stetson Bennett looked like a quarterback. If we want to say that, he looked decent. He was really the bright spot for Georgia. And I mean, he kind of torched the Michigan defense that's been pretty good all year, but their main strength is stopping the run and getting pressure on the quarterback, which they stopped the run. They had decent pressure. It's just that back end of that Michigan defense could not defend against Stetson Bennett. I'm going to say it again. Stetson Bennett was playing quarterback for Georgia in this game. So kudos to Georgia. They get to play Bama again tomorrow as we're recording this. So good luck. Not gonna lie.
All right. Well, in the words of the great Michael Scott, it takes a big man to admit when he's wrong. And I'm gonna rephrase this a little bit. I'm about half that man. Stetson Bennett played pretty well in this game. He hit some throws. I was having a New Year's party and I had this on in the background, and I would look up and there was another touchdown on the board. Michigan beat Ohio State by running all over them, and their leading rusher had 9 carries for 39 yards. Hassan Haskins, who just declared for the draft. He's a quality running back. And Michigan, their defense got shut down in terms of a potential top 2 pick in the guy that I now can't remember the name of, even though he's my number 1 pass rusher for this upcoming year. Oh my goodness. Aiden Hutchinson.
There you go.
There we go. He got shut down. He did absolutely nothing in this game. And Georgia's defense swallowed them whole. They did what they've done to every team this year, except for Bama. Georgia might have just pushed Jim Harbaugh right back to the NFL. I think this was kind of like Jim Harbaugh was like, oh, cool. I'm doing good this year. We're finally getting Michigan going. And this was like a cold slap in the face that said, hey, man, you just can't stack up to the way that we recruit and the way we get this top end talent that you don't have. And now he's telling his recruits that he might go back, that he's considering NFL jobs. He might have just pushed them out of Michigan. Georgia has so many studs on that defense, and Stetson Bennett played well. They could have ran the ball a little better, but if Stetson Bennett could play like this against Bama, then they might have a chance. I'm gonna stand on a hill and say that they need to play JT Daniels, because I just think he is more talented and is more sure fail-proof in a game against Bama. But they obviously aren't going to do that. And then it comes down to Georgia's defense. You just saw Cincinnati partially do it with their secondary. Your strength is the front 7, not the secondary. And so they carved you up through the air, and then you couldn't get back because you're not really an air team against them. So they just didn't match up well there. They're going to have to find a way to slow them down in the secondary. Whether that's getting a pass rush to slow it down because their secondary is not as good, they have to do something. They don't have the DBs like Cincinnati, but they have to do something to disrupt Bryce Young, because they can't go out there and put up another national embarrassment. This is such a storied program. They haven't won a championship in over 40 years. They just can't do it anymore. Georgia Tech's won a championship more recently than them. This is unacceptable. They have to win this game. This is an absolute must-win game for the program that is the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah. Takeaways from me is Michigan got put in their place in this game. Like you said, I think Harbaugh stays. I know he's going to hear NFL jobs, but the kind of memos that I got, I know it's right after a dominating loss, but it's kind of seems like he kind of just said, like, this is the beginning for Michigan football. And I really feel like he's starting to get into his groove in his tenure here at Michigan. He finally got over the hump of Ohio State. It only took about 12 years is what it seemed like. But as far as this game goes, I'll say it. Stetson Bennett played all right. I was kind of shocked. I didn't watch the first 2 quarters, and I turned on the score and I saw it was 27-3, and I took a shower to make sure my eyes were actually clear. And then I relooked, and yes, it was 27-3. I was kind of shocked, honestly. Like you said, Hutchinson got shut down. And is it Cade? I don't even know how you say his last name, McNamara. He got absolutely boxed all game long.
And a
Um,
Java.
yeah, and Ojaba, yeah, they both got shut down. I mean, when you talk about the star players for Michigan, they really didn't do much this entire game. Like the 3 or 4 guys that they've relied on all year to make plays did not show up. And Georgia is just, they're so well rounded. They have the best defense I've seen in college football in a long time. They have they have all the weapons. I mean, James Cook out the backfield. Is it who's White? Zamir White. Zamir White, he's a stud too. They have the best freshman tight end I've seen since Kyle Pitts and Brock Bowers. Dude is a stud, and he fits perfectly in this Stetson Bennett 5-yard check down offense when they do end up throwing the ball, because he's an elite athlete at the tight end position because he can get out and move for a big white guy. So yeah, I don't know. It was just impressive how Georgia manhandled Michigan. The future of Michigan, I don't know, but I agree with you, Luke. Must-win game. I mean, Georgia hasn't been in this good of a position to win a national championship since either Chubb and Michelle, or we're talking like Aaron Murray days. So yeah, it must-win game. They got to get Bama eventually. But you know me, I never bet against Saban, so I think you know who I'm going to take. But yeah, dominating performance. And I really think that's why Georgia's favored going into this game against Bama. The line's 2.5, if I'm not mistaken, as I look at it right now. So yeah, this performance really showed the ties, because I mean, Bama was very good, but they weren't electric like Georgia was in that first half, and they didn't dominate. They dominated in a different form or a different way. It just wasn't as expressive or like mind blowing by any means. So yeah, I'm excited for this game. It got me excited again, but yeah, Stetson Bennett. So
Yep.
what do you do?
I will too.
What do you do?
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Gotta love being a Georgia sports fan. Great quarterback play. So Wake Forest defeats Texas A. Oh, sorry, not Texas A&M. 5-8 Rutgers. So we replaced Texas A&M, the only team that's beat Bama, one of the better SEC teams, with again 5-8 Rutgers. I don't know how they expected this to go. Wake Forest wins 38-10. Hartman played a pretty good game, tore up again a Rutgers defense. Yeah, I don't gotta say anything else. They're playing Rutgers. I don't know how a 5-8 Rutgers team gets to a bowl game, but hey, that's what COVID will do to you, I guess.
Rutgers just
make it a point
mandated Texas A&M into forfeiting out of this game, honestly, is my opinion. They were too scared, and they were afraid of Wake Forest, and they said, oh, hey, Rutgers, I know you guys have been playing football this year, and
you've had some recent success.
I know you guys are in the shower right now, but you got a game tomorrow against Wake Forest, so get on that plane. And Rutgers went out there and played football. They did sure do that, and it was a football game that I didn't watch. So Wake Forest, looking at the line, Sam Hartman dominated like usual. Rutgers is terrible and hasn't been good in a long time, won't be for a long time. And congratulations to Rutgers for getting to play a bowl game and getting an extra paycheck.
Yeah, honestly, like I'm pretty sure they just put a bunch of 5-7 teams in a hat and just pulled one out. They're like, woo, Rutgers is playing this game. You get to play Wake Forest. Congratulations.
One that would volunteer to do it, honestly, is what I heard.
I rather would have seen Texas because they have a resemblance of football history that would have made me more interested in this game. Like you said, Luke, I didn't watch this game either. I saw Rutgers was playing in it, and I switched the channel. It was as simple as that. I went and did something much more productive with my life. Yeah, Sam Hartman, like you said, dominant. A.T. Perry, dominant. Wake Forest just throws that run and gun offense at you like almost every ACC team does, except for Clemson. And yeah, they came out and crushed Rutgers, especially in the second half, where they outscored them 18 to that number right there, 0. And yeah, it was just an impressive performance. I knew they were going to win. I think America knew they were going to win. If you picked Rutgers, the only reason you picked them is because you either go there now and you're an alumni. So congrats if you were picked Rutgers. I pray for you.
I pray for thee. Another game that had switches of opponents. Luke's Washington State Cougars. We're talking about how they don't know what Central Michigan even is or was. I think they do now because Central Michigan flat out embarrassed Washington State. They win 24-21. It looked close. I'm telling you right now, I watched the end of this and the first part of it. So I watched the game, I guess. Washington State looked terrible, absolutely terrible. So you have the floor, Luke. Go ahead.
So kind of like how Harbaugh might have been pushed out of Michigan by that brutal loss. The starting quarterback, Jaden DeLora, who I really liked and thought was an interesting young talent, got pushed out of the school of Washington State by this game because he went 9-19 for 45 yards, got sacked 3 times, and they were down 21-0 at half. They put in the backup, Victor Gabalis, who I've never heard of, and he throws for 177 yards and 2 touchdowns, and all of a sudden they only lose by 3, and they're in it at the end of this game. And then he transfers. Jaden DeLora transfers from the school just a couple of days ago. So this game was very brutal. I will say Washington State has an NFL late round pick running back who sort of resembles McCaffrey in play style, not talent. But he wasn't in this game. And then they also have a late round right tackle. Actually, he might be like a second round guy. I've seen some mocks up there named Abraham Lucas, and he also didn't play. So they had a couple of guys out that are possible NFL talents. But like you said, they went on TikTok and posted about this team being mid because they're in the Mid-American Conference. Very clever. And then said, like, what the heck is a Chippewa and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that seems pretty interesting. You're saying that about a school that picked up for Miami that had to drop out because of COVID. And then they come in and slap you in the face and put you back in your place. And I think that maybe Washington State should head over to the Mid-American. We should get Central Michigan and Pac-12 because Pac-12 sucks. And we need some new blood because it's brutal and it's terrible to watch. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, when I go to some games next year, we look a little bit better. We are apparently the favorites to get this quarterback from Incarnate Word, who maybe you guys know because you played them or something. I don't know, but no idea. But he threw for 4,700 yards and 47 touchdowns in FCS last year. Not to brag or anything, but we're basically going to win the national championship next year. So watch out. And that's all I have to tell you.
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about him. I know he threw. They played Sam Houston before Montana State played him, and he had 500 yards and 5 touchdowns against number 1 Sam Houston.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah. I didn't watch hardly any Pac-12 this year except for the Utah game, the big Utah games, and Oregon and Montana beating Washington to start the year. I watched that. I watched a little bit of that game, but I didn't watch this game neither. It seems like this man, Lou Nichols, kind of just ran it all over him, 30 carries.
Ooh, he dominated them. He looked like kind of looked like Derrick Henry's middle school tape out there, honestly. A man among preschoolers, honestly. It was pretty pathetic.
And yeah, CMU just really came out early and took advantage of a Washington State team that seemed overly confident coming into this game, like you said. And Kenny just came back to bite them. They go up 21-0 just going into half. And then, like you said, backup QB comes in and he's got to make plays, which honestly, he didn't play terrible. He was actually fairly solid. I know his completion percentage is below 50, which is something you don't want to see, but he's playing down. They're not going to run the ball. You know they're going to pass. So that kind of takes away some reads. But yeah, CMU kind of just manhandled them in the first half, took care of business in the second half, and dominated time of possession, which was key when you're up 21-0 at half.
Yeah, again, kind of, saw the more exciting parts of this game because I guess the whole game. But yeah, again, lovely trash talk from you, Washington State Cougars.
Utah
Gotta love
lost
it.
2, by the way.
Especially, hey, we're getting there, okay? Okay, we're getting there. But we weren't out here saying we don't know what a Buckeye is either. So I don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it.
I don't think you want to talk trash to Ohio State. I'm pretty sure everybody knows who Ohio State is.
Fair point. Hey,
We almost
we'll call
beat
it a draw.
Utah this year. You better watch out. We'll beat them next year.
Oh, I'm so scared of Washington State. This clip's going to be looked back next year, and I'm going to look like a fool if we lose. But anyway, Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl is canceled because of Boise State. Because of Boise State. That's how Central Michigan ends up in the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. All right, we'll get to the inevitable. Utah, Ohio State. I will say it didn't go Utah's way. And, I'll get that out of the way. This was one of the best bowl games I have ever seen because you see Utah start out like they did against Oregon, and you sit there and you go, "What? Why can't Utah play like this the whole year?" And then you also remember that CJ Stroud and Smith Najigba's on the other side, and our secondary is not very good. Our front seven's good, but our secondary is not good. And we witnessed the greatest receiving performance in college football history because you go for 15 catches, 347, and 3 touchdowns. Insane. Ohio State has a big second half to close it out and win by 3. Kind of sucked for Utah at the end with Cam Rising getting hurt because,
Knocked down.
not like they were going to win it because Ohio State had all the momentum. It just sucked that the starter couldn't fish out. Kid from California. Both these quarterbacks gripped 30 minutes from the Rose Bowl, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, again, I didn't have high expectations for Utah. They overexceeded them for me. I know they lost, but to play an Ohio State team that, okay, granted, didn't have Chris Olave, didn't have their arguably at the time their 2 best receivers until this game started. The fact that we only lost by 3, I felt pretty good. Not gonna lie, but hey, a loss is a loss. I'll take my L. Yeah.
Yeah, Utah was in a game where I didn't think they really stood a chance because they were playing one of like the few 3 or 4 teams that are in the upper echelon of teams we usually consider to be this is going to be the college football playoff teams every year. They're not quite Alabama, but they're sort of in that tier-ish range. CJ Stroud had probably one of the best games I've ever seen from a college football quarterback. This dude didn't just throw for 573 and 6 touchdowns. He was dropping some of the best passes I've seen. And every single time Utah thing, one of the most electric stretches of football I've ever watched in my entire life. It was 25-yard touchdown to Marvin Harrison Jr. How about that for a name there? And then a touchdown Utah, and they're up 21-7, but then it's 50-yard touchdown to Smith and Jigba. Then a kickoff return touchdown. Then a 52-yard touchdown to Smith and Jigba. Then a 62-yard touchdown. It was just an insane play for Cameron Rising. And then, as I would know, because I've dealt with some concussion issues myself in my life, Cameron Rising gets knocked out. Hey. Bryson Barnes, the freshman walk-on, comes in here for Utah, throws a dime, hits him up for a touchdown. And I said, well, this game's over because they left him over a minute and they have not come anywhere close to stopping CJ Stroud and Smith and Jigba. Bailey has said so many times that he comes over to my house and he says, I think Smith and Jigba is the best receiver on this team and probably the best receiver in college football right now. He's telling me about this guy. I'm like, yeah, I've heard of him, but I mean, better than Olave and better than some of these other guys, even on his own team. Dude, 15 catches for 347 and 3 touchdowns. How's he not tired? He's doing it every play. It's just insane that they can do this with so many guys out with COVID and injuries. I mean, a valiant effort to a Utah team that I didn't think was capable of scoring 45 points in shooting it out in a game like this. And credit to the special teams, Britton Covey. But yeah, Ohio State, just between Stroud and Smith and Jigba alone, too much talent there.
Yeah, this is hands down best college football game all year. Hands down the best college football game I think I've ever watched.
We still have the national championship.
This year, yeah,
We still have it this
there's
year.
potential.
Still got one.
There's still there's
Potential.
potential, but I don't think it'll beat this, even if it's got to be like 62-57. This game was absolutely ridiculous from start to finish. Like you said, Utah jumping out so early. I think there's positive takeaways from both teams here. Even though Utah lost, they still made a huge statement that they can really hang with these. Like Ohio State is the quintessential, like after Bama. Personally, I think Ohio State right off the bat, when I'm thinking quintessential football teams in college football. And because they just they have pro level coaching with pro level talent year after year after year after year. And you don't think Utah when you think that, because they don't get great recruiting. Their coaches, I mean, besides the 1 year they had Urban, are under the radar, and at least in my opinion. And
Yeah,
they're just not a nationally globalized team. Yeah, there is not a nationally televised team week in and week out. But yeah, they made an absolute statement here. I was cheering for them to win. And they played so hard, and I feel so bad that they lost. But Ryan Day was just the better coach at the end of the day. CJ Stroud was just the better quarterback at the end of the day. And Jackson Smith Njigba is the best college receiver I've seen since probably Julio Jones at Alabama. This dude is off the chain. He reminds me of Devonta Smith. He straight up reminds me of Devonta Smith, basically in and out. The route running, the ability to put hands on ball, the yards after the catch, and he plays in a pro level offense that just feeds and feeds and feeds and feeds him, especially with Noah Olave, especially with Noah Wilson. And when you have Marvin Harrison Jr. step up to the plate the same way, he had 3 touchdowns in this game. You couldn't have asked for more. I was waiting for Utah to adjust. Like that's what I was waiting for them to do, because I know I like Utah's coaching staff a lot, and I was waiting for them to do something to stop Smith Njigba from catching the ball, but they let him get free release off the line every time, and basically he ran untouched routes all game. That's why he wasn't tired. He's not getting bumped. He's running all over the field with no resistance whatsoever. He would run in 15-yard in route. It was clean. He'd catch it, turn up field. It's a 40-yard gain in the blink of an eye. And he did that 15 times this game because he had 350 yards receiving. It literally looks like a quarterback stat line. It's ridiculous. And he had 16 targets. You catch 15 of them. And you're maybe thinking 9 in the NFL, that's like 140 yards receiving, 347 yards receiving, 347. It's the best performance I think I've ever seen on a college football field between him and Stroud. It's Burrow and Jefferson. It's Jones and Smith at Alabama. It's that caliber of performance. I think, in my opinion, even better, even though I know Utah's not that level of competition, but they are a great football team. So I think there's positive takeaways from both sides. You have, I think, who should be, maybe besides Bryce Young, the Heisman favorite in CJ Stroud, and the best receiver in college football with Smith Njigba for Ohio State. And of course, they're going to bring in 5-star talent probably like 20 guys as they do every year. And for Utah, it's a statement game. Even though they lost, it's a statement game to get better recruits, pull more guys out of the states of Oregon, Washington, maybe a little bit of Eastern California, Arizona, and spread the recruiting profile, because if they can get their hands on some better recruits, Utah is going to be a force in the Pac-12. I think they're scary. They're scary, and that's really all I got to say. It's the best college football game I think I've ever watched. It was electric from start to finish.
Yeah, for sure. I think, like we were saying earlier, this Pac-12, I'm not taking a shot at the Pac-12 North by any means, but in the South, you're going to have Utah, you're going to have USC, and you're going to have Chip Kelly and UCLA. That is very intriguing, to say the least, because that means Utah will play USC every year. They will play UCLA every year. So the South is going to be loaded, man. You people in the North with your Washington State Cougars, you Oregon Ducks, it's going to be tough to beat a team out of the South in the Pac-12 championship, I think.
I agree.
It's a Pac-12 then, and we're going to beat you anyways, even though you're going to be ranked 5th in the country, and then we're going to beat you by 30 points.
Okay. I will timestamp what episode we were on. Okay, good to know. All right. Next game, PlayStation Fiesta Bowl. Notre Dame's had all the noise with Brian Kelly leaving. And, well, they started out really good, up 28-14 at the half, but then Spencer Sanders turned it on for Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State comes back and wins 37-35. Really just a fun game to watch back and forth. Spencer Sanders playing amazing. And then Khan for Notre Dame has over 500 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. All these quarterbacks that go off for 505 or 6 or whatever in bowl games seem to be losing, other than Stroud and our boy Bailey at Western Kentucky. So maybe having dominant quarterback play isn't always the best, but flip that, dominant play for Oklahoma State from Spencer Sanders, and that defense really turned up in the second half, holding a Notre Dame offense that looked like they could not be stopped to 7 points in the second half.
This is an electric game. I mean, you start off up 28-7. You're Notre Dame. You're thinking, man, Jack Cohn's never played like this in his life. What's going on? And you're doing it against Oklahoma State's great defense. And you're thinking maybe Notre Dame was a really good win for Cincinnati, and maybe they are really close to the playoff picture. And then Oklahoma State scores 28 straight points, end up taking home the win. And Spencer Sanders throws for 371 and 4 touchdowns, didn't have a blemish on the resume. And he runs for 125 yards too. This was such a great game for Spencer Sanders. I mean, I've been talking about how bad he's been this year. It's too bad Notre Dame couldn't run the ball at all. And all I've heard is that Jack Cohn he looked so good in the first half, but he ended up throwing 68 passes, which is just too many passes for a guy that's not kind of in that upper echelon of quarterbacks. But he had a good game. Was not nearly as good in the second half. You could tell because they scored 28 straight points against Notre Dame. Obviously, Notre Dame had the 300 receivers. I mean, this was just an electric back and forth game where there was no defense, which is not what I expected at all. I expected it to be much more of a defensive game, especially with Oklahoma State's defense being even better than how they were in this game. And great win for Oklahoma State. I mean, Notre Dame's going to be getting they have the top recruiting class coming up in 2023. Oklahoma State's nowhere near that, but this is a great win for now for Oklahoma State in the Big 12, especially with some of the bigger contenders like Oklahoma leaving in a few years. So maybe they're in position to kind of be the Big 12, the king of the Big 12 from here on out for a little while. This is a big statement win for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think as much as that Utah, as much of a statement that wasn't that game, I think Oklahoma State did the same thing here in this game. Like Ohio State, you think perennial football when you think Notre Dame. Jack Cohn, 68 pass attempts. If Marcus Freeman is the coach next year, and it is over 50 pass attempts in every game. I'm very excited to watch Notre Dame football. I just love watching air raid offense in college football, especially when you have 4 and 5 star talent all over the place. That's what made Utah, Ohio State so exciting. Is you got to watch Stroud and Smith and Jigba the entire game. Like you said, Luke, 0 rush game in the second half. That's what killed Notre Dame. And you said 68 pass attempts, 30 incompletions. So it's 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. All of a sudden, Oklahoma State, with the snap of a finger, is right back in this game and has the lead, because you stalled so much in that third quarter, and Spencer Sanders took advantage. To be blatantly honest with you, he was incredible in this game. I agreed with you, Luke. I thought he was going to be their demise. He's kind of like, it's kind of like the Rams and Stafford. They win or lose based on how good this guy plays. And he was absolutely fantastic. 500 yards of total offense just on his own. And then you add another 100 rushing yards. Oklahoma State has over 600 yards of offense in this game. Notre Dame has 551 yards of offense strictly through Jack Cohn. And his ability to spread the ball is what I was impressed with. Not only just the decision making, especially in that first half, like you guys said, but like 8 catches from Styles Jr., 6 for Tyree, 6 for Austin Jr., and then 7 and 7 for Meyer and Lindsey. So, and they all had over 60 yards, the first 3 all having over 100 yards and a touchdown. So impressive performance. Tay Martin was incredible in this game, had one of the best catches all year in this game with 3 touchdowns. He was really the go-to guy for Sanders when it came down to it, him and Presley, with 137 yards receiving. But yeah, it was a really entertaining game. But I feel bad for Notre Dame. Well, I don't care for Notre Dame personally, but feel bad for their fans. They're 0-8 in New York Six Bowls now.
You just can't build a program when you cannot win the bigger games. And it trickles down even with new coaching. But next game, Sugar Bowl. Baylor wins 21-7 against Ole Miss. We didn't see this coming because, frankly, we thought Matt Corral was going to be playing the whole game. And this is one of those cases where, we say earlier, Sam Howell maybe hurts his draft stock with how bad he played against South Carolina for North Carolina. And, thankfully it wasn't a bad injury for Matt Corral. He gets hurt in this game, just a sprain. He's good. He's healthy. But it does beg the question, when you don't have guys playing bowl games, how it affects their stock. We'll go into that in a little bit. But as for this game, really not much after Matt Corral got hurt. I really didn't care to watch this game because it was pretty much all right, Matt Corral's one of the guys playing. Let's see how it goes against a very good Baylor team. And frankly, once he went out, it kind of just derailed everything, kind of like with Montana State. Once the quarterback goes out, it's a downhill battle from there. You're fighting uphill to try to get back in the game. And really, Ole Miss just didn't have enough in the tank, especially at the end, because Baylor scores 14 in the 4th.
Yeah. So this game started off kind of how I expected. I thought it was going to be another good defensive performance for Baylor, but it was going to be a really good test because they're not playing Spencer Sanders. They're playing Matt Corral, who is one of the better quarterbacks in college football this year. And it really is unfortunate to see him go out like that, especially his last play kind of being a pick 6 there that set up Baylor nicely early on. My takeaway from the whole opting out of the bowl game thing is, instead of expecting everyone to play and losing respect for players that opt out for the NFL, I think we should honestly just expect top NFL talents to not play, because you saw the reaction among people when Matt Corral got hurt, saying, why are you so stupid? All this stuff, because what are you doing? You should have opted out. I think you just kind of expect these NFL guys to opt out initially. And then when they do play and they come out like Joe Tessitore told me about, was it Joe Tessitore? Can't remember. But whoever the announcer was in this game, I think it was Joe Tessitore, told me about 1,500 times Matt Corral really wanted to, show up for his guys and do the honorable thing, which is really cool. But it's not really cool when I have to hear Joe Tessitore say it 8,000 times. He's my least favorite announcer in all of sports, in case you were wondering. But yeah, I mean, anyways, for the game though, Baylor throws for 40 yards. Gary Bohannon, their quarterback, 7-17, a touchdown and a pick. They ran. Abram Smith dominated on the ground, 177 yards, 26 carries, 6.8 per clip. How did he not score any touchdowns on the ground? It was a valiant effort by the true freshman for Ole Miss quarterback, Luke Altmaier is his name. So we're name buddies at least. But he just couldn't really do it. I mean, he's a freshman. It's his first start. He's going up against one of the best defenses in the country. Just didn't really stand a chance. I don't know how Corral would have fared throughout the rest of the game. He didn't get off to a great start, but he's a stud, so you would have expected more, and maybe it would have been closer in the end. But nonetheless, this is a huge win for Baylor, a big win for their coach. They're another team in the Big 12 with Oklahoma leaving eventually. It could be theirs to run potentially up there with Oklahoma State. There will be some great duels there, and just good for Baylor. I mean, they don't have Matt Rule anymore. They had a terrible year last year in their first year without Matt Rule, and then this year with Dave Aranda, they have a fantastic season. It's their first ever 12-win season, their first ever New Year's Six bowl win in just the second year under Dave Aranda. That's just an absolutely stunning season. Tremendous. Congratulations, Baylor, because I mean, they're already dominant in college basketball, and now you can add football to the resume. That's a great sports school now for college.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, once Corral went down in this game, I lost all interest because it's really, like you said, the true freshman quarterback against probably a top 5 or 7 defense in the country in Baylor. That's where Baylor really makes their money, is defensively. And Baylor's defense dominated this entire game. When you only give up 7 points to a Lane Kiffin-led offense, I don't care who's running quarterback. If you only give up 7 points, that's a statement win. And they dominated from front to back. Yeah, I don't really have much more to add to what you guys said. Abraham Smith was electric basically all game. And then they had Baldwin come in, who was kind of the speed guy, and he capped off a 48-yard touchdown run, which was the main play I saw in this game. Bohannon didn't have to do a dang thing in this game. Just let Smith and Baldwin do most of the work, and they really just carried this team to how you have to play when you're a defensive-oriented team, which is run down the clock as fast as you possibly can and just make sure keep it low scoring. And that's what they did all game. The turnaround, like you said, for Baylor has just been incredible. I mean, ever since Art Briles and RG3, and then you go into Matt Rule, and then the Matt Rule era, which he was very good. And now you have the Miranda era, and they're just getting great coach after great coach after great coach ever since what happened with Art Briles, which I really liked Art Briles as a football coach, not so much as a person, but those are two totally separate things. But yeah, statement went from Baylor. They're still, like you said, they're solidifying themselves as a top program in the country, basketball and football. So those are the top 2 sports. So congrats to Baylor. They're starting to really put their name back on the map in both areas.
Hey, they got something cooking down there in Waco. You best be watching, guys. Next game, Citrus Bowl. It's just like Wisconsin. Yay, Iowa's playing. I love that. Kentucky beats Iowa 2017. Iowa they had their chances, and they just they did what Iowa does, man. They don't finish. They don't execute. They don't give you any reason to go, dang, I can't wait to watch Iowa football on Saturdays, because that was absolutely brutal to watch. And Kentucky, like, they're good, but like they're the bottom-ish of the SEC. They're like kind of like Tennessee. They're kind of granted they had a great year this year, but most times it's so I mean, great win for Kentucky. It's great program win. And for Iowa, you just keep scratching your head because I don't know how you go from 2 and then you just lose to Purdue. It's kind of like a small, and then you lose to Kentucky in your bowl game, in a bowl game that really, I think, favored Iowa in the run game. And they just couldn't capitalize. It's as simple as that. They got outplayed, they got outcoached. And again, another one where it's like, I didn't really care to watch because Iowa was in it.
Yeah, I was actually busy when this one happened, so I didn't get the chance to watch it. I don't know if I would have watched it though, because as I mentioned in the last pod, Spencer Petras is quarterback for Iowa. Probably the worst quarterback I've ever seen in my entire life. I loved what I saw from Stroud, one of the best performances I've ever seen. This guy just, I'll give him this. He's very consistent at being terrible. 3 more picks in this game. Did his best to lose his team the game and succeeded. They did have a 100-yard receiver somehow. Their defense did okay. Will Levis, the quarterback for Kentucky, played okay. Chris Rodriguez ran the ball well for Kentucky. Congratulations to Kentucky. I mean, they're kind of an overlooked football school, more of a basketball school, but they've been pretty good the last few years with Mark Stoops as the coach there. 9-3 this year. They finished second in the SEC East, had a nice season. They finished ranked with a ranked win against a team in another conference. And so good for them. The one note I have for this is, not this game specifically, is the coach for Kentucky does get a 1-year contract extension every time he has 8 wins in a season. It's a part of his contract benefits. So if he can keep doing this and just beating the bottom feeders of the SEC and winning out of conference games and maybe a bowl game every year, he's going to be the head coach of Kentucky for all time. I mean, that's a pretty sweet gig. And at that rate, Kentucky will be 9-3 and second in their division every year. And we'll see the same thing from them. And we'll continue to see the same thing from Iowa because they've had the same coach for like the last 30 years. You just hope that they eventually find a competent quarterback. Otherwise, they're never going to be back on top of the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think you made a great point, Logan, that this is a game where Iowa should have dominated up front, because that is what Iowa is known for, is NFL offensive line talent and producing tight ends at an unbelievable rate. And they have Linderbaum, I believe. I don't know if he played. Did he play? I don't.
He played, got hurt, and then played again.
Okay, so he did play. Which he's projected to be a top 7 draft pick probably.
He won't get center, but he's got that talent though.
Yeah, and he can be moved around to left and right guard. He has versatility in the NFL, which is a big thing. If you can play multiple positions on the line and you can play them all at an elite level, you are a highly wanted prospect going into the draft, which he can do that. But yeah, it's a game he figured Iowa would dominate up front, which they had an okay run game. 16 for 98 is fairly good. But when you have, like you said, Spencer Petras throwing 3 picks, it's tough to win when you turn the ball over 3 times in a game. And Kentucky made the most of their opportunities. They only had 1 turnover. And I know they have less total yards. That's because they're getting good field position off these picks that he's throwing. And they capitalized constantly. Wandale Robinson, which I believe he's like the utility guy. Isn't he like crazy? I think he played a little running back too. He's super versatile. He had 10 catches for 170 yards in this game, tore up Iowa on the offensive side of the ball. And then, like you said, Rodriguez Jr. did his fair share as well. 20 carries, over 5 yards a touch. Perfect. So, yeah, in a game where you thought Iowa would win in the trenches, which is a very key factor, Kentucky actually kind of did that and used their speed and elusiveness to an advantage and just got the ball to their playmakers when they needed them to come through. That's really the huge takeaway from this game.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. the last one before we get into our picks for the championship, national championship, and then our little talk about maybe expanding the playoff because obviously that intrigues players to play more. Penn State, Arkansas, in the Outback Bowl, and Arkansas dominated without who I think you all can disagree. I think Treylon Burks is the best receiver in the draft this year out of Arkansas. He doesn't play in this game, obviously, because he's getting ready for the draft. And Arkansas still beats Penn State by 14. I don't know what happened to Penn State. James Franklin better figure this out because that is not how that works at Penn State. He will be out of there in a year if he does not turn this around. Even after getting that big old extension for 10 years, he will be done in a year if they cannot figure it out.
Yeah, you said Treylon Burks is the best wide receiver. I just want to say that he's not the best receiver, but he might be the most talented player that's listed as a wide receiver because I think he's kind of like a Deebo Samuel for the Niners because he's pretty good wide receiving. But when you give this dude the ball in space, he's a wide receiver, got wide receiver speed, but this guy's a tank. He's got the quads. He's got quads like Saquon and speed like Deebo. He's a stud. I mean, he's going to be a stud. There's a use for him. If you have a good coach, which God forbid he goes to like Carolina or something where their coach sucks. I don't know. That's just the first thing off the top of my head. I just hope that the coach uses him right in the NFL and he'll be great. They didn't have him and they still dominated because KJ Jefferson, that quarterback, is also a human tank and he ran for 110 yards. They had 4 guys over 60 yards in this game. They had 4 guys over 5.5 yards a carry. They dominated all over the ground here. Sean Clifford tried to keep up through the air because Penn State couldn't really run the ball and he wasn't very good, 43% through the air, and he had 2 picks. And they just couldn't get anything going. I mean, they just ran all over him, played great defense, and took it home. And this is just a great season. After a 2-win season a year ago for Arkansas, now all of a sudden they're 8-4 and winning a bowl game against Penn State, who's a cherished program in the Big Ten. So, I mean, a great win. Congratulations to them. And the only other thing I have to say about Burks and that whole thing is, I mean, Penn State also didn't have John Dotson, who's a top wide receiver prospect in the NFL draft. There's no good quarterbacks, really, top line quarterbacks in this draft. But man, if you don't need a quarterback, this is one of the deepest drafts at every other position. It's going to be so fun to watch. And 2 of the best guys were also not in this game. So just another victim, another bowl game that falls victim to missing some of the best players. But if you like watching running, then you probably liked watching Arkansas in this game.
Yeah, adding on to Burks a little bit. Like you said, I think Deebo is a fair comparison. It's just Deebo at 6'3", 225, where Deebo is 5'11", 190. So
it's just in player type, not necessarily.
Yeah, and play style. Just add a few more inches and a couple more pounds, and you have an absolute tank that can run a 4.3 40. Which that's the kind of athlete he is. But Arkansas in this game, I honestly thought Arkansas was one of the best teams in the SEC this year because they had such a tough schedule this year. They had to play Georgia and Bama basically back to back, which Burks went berserk against Bama. He had like 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. They almost won that game. They only lost by a touchdown. But yeah, I feel like Arkansas doesn't get enough credit for being 9-4 this year and playing Bama, Georgia, Florida, literally these perennial SEC
Texas
teams.
A&M.
Texas A&M, yeah, these high caliber SEC teams, basically back to back. And they were lucky that if they walked out 500, and they did. Like that was basically the brightest part of the season because they dog walked everyone else. So yeah, this is just the cherry on top. Go out and beat Penn State. I'm totally with you, Logan. Franklin, like I think they were ranked like 7 at one point in the year, and then they lost 4.
Yeah, when they played Iowa, they were 4th. Iowa was 2nd. They lost.
Then they lost in overtime, right?
Yeah.
And then the season just went off a cliff. right after that. And I don't know, they're kind of doing their best Carolina Panthers impression because they haven't won a game, it seems like forever. Because the Panthers are 1-11 or 1-12 in their last 13. So that's impressive. But yeah, the two best players were in this game. I didn't have much interest. I'm very happy Arkansas walked out on top, though. Just keep the momentum going. Like you said, Jefferson's a tank at quarterback. He had 110 yards rushing, too. So, yeah, I don't have much to add on to what you guys said, except for Raheem Sanders also had 2 touchdowns on the ground with just 13 carries. So they really started the run game against Penn State, who they need a clean refresh after the ending of this year.
Yep.
Yeah, these aren't the days of good old Trace McSorley and Saquon. But Trace McSorley. Let's transfer over to the national championship game being played in Indianapolis. So someone's gonna win because Indy can't win in Indy. So that's at least good. Another team will win in Indy, like usual. Bama, Georgia. Georgia favored by 2.5 in this one, which again, kind of like Bailey hinted at earlier, isn't surprising just because of how dominant of a performance they had against Michigan. But like Bailey also said, you do not bet against Nick Saban. This offense for Bama, like we give Georgia's defense all this credit that, again, one of the better defenses we've ever seen. But Alabama's offense is one of the best offenses we've ever seen. And I keep always picking the defense, and it never works out. So I'll switch it up this time. I'll pick Bama. I'll pick Bama to win by 10.
Yeah. Last time I made the mistake of betting against the much superior coach and quarterback. No Mechie kind of hurts. Like I said earlier, I just don't think Georgia secondary is the strength of the defense, which is kind of why I think that Saban, with Bryce Young's talent and Jameson Williams' talent at wide receiver, was able to overpower them in the secondary. And then the defense just had a great plan for Stetson Bennett. Didn't let him run around, didn't let him run the ball. And then they just made Stetson Bennett be Stetson Bennett. And when Stetson Bennett has to take over the game against one of the better defenses and one of the better defensive-minded coaches of all time, it's not looking too good for you. So, I mean, I thought that Georgia in the last game could control the line of scrimmage defensively, especially, and just overpower Bryce Young, which would be the key. So maybe they could shut down Brian Robinson, but this is going to tell me a lot about Kirby Smart. What adjustments can you make to Bryce Young? Like, what can you learn from the Cincinnati game? Like, what can you do from your last game, controlling Brian Robinson, but also learn from Cincinnati, trying to slow down Bryce Young and adjust to Saban's game plan? But I just think Saban and Bryce Young, there's too much brain there from Saban and too much skill there from Young. The connection with Williams, and I'm just going to have to go with what you have to go with in this situation. Just can't bet against Saban and the talent there. So I'm going to take Alabama by 17 in this one.
Yeah. I know when we really originally did our predictions, I had Bama by 21 or 24, something egregious. I think there's a couple keys in this game. Of course, I mean, you talk about the coaching matchup, which is arguably one of the all-time coaching matchups, even though it's just one-sided. But you get great games. It's Smart and Saban. Kirby Smart is a great coach. It's just when it comes to quarterbacks, he's not the best. But when it comes to literally defensive mindedness, because I believe he was the DC at Bama under Saban. So he gets to learn from Saban, which Saban's only lost one game to any part of his tree, his coaching tree that he's built. And that was Jimbo Fisher this year. So I think he's 42-1. So I mean, you just don't bet against Saban. It's as simple as that. I take Bama with the plus 2.5. I'm taking Bama by 14. Like you said, Alabama's Like we said, the first time for the SEC championship, Alabama's offensive line has been fairly inconsistent at the start of the year. They've really ramped up their level of play, especially how dominant they were in the run against Cincinnati. It was very impressive how they played. Evan Neal at the ridiculous size of 6'7", like 340. And the way he moves is insane, guarding Bryce Young's blind side. But Young's the best quarterback in college football. There's no debate about it. If he wins the college football playoff, I think he's a better prospect than Lawrence. I just like him a little more mobility. And I will die on that hill, even if he loses this game, because he'll get another shot next year. But yeah, I'm taking Bama. Jordan Davis could be a force in this game. I just don't think that secondary can hang. They're really going to have to create pressure. And Bama doesn't really need to create pressure. They just need to contain Stetson Bennett and make him a pocket passer. He's one of the worst pocket passers, not only in the SEC, in the college football playoff, in the top 20 AP top 25. He just can't throw from the pocket. He has to improvise. And when he can't improvise and make plays with his feet and then make defenses commit to him, it's going to be a long night. I like Bama by 14, 38-24. I think Young goes off again. And maybe they try to establish Robinson a little bit more, even though that's going to be really tough against guys like Jordan Davis, guys like Nakobe Dean. It's going to be tough to do that, but I just think Bryce Young and Saban is an unmatched combo in college football right now. It really is.
Yeah, so we're set up for the national championship we wanted, but we're going to backtrack a little bit because the topics there we'll give our takes. So Kirk Herbstreit, Desmond Howard on game day before the Ohio State Utah game pretty much called out people that sit out bowl games and say, I don't know how you can sit out when your guys have played for you, yada yada. I just don't get it. My thing is, first of all, I've learned how annoying announcers can be when they played for the former team. I get why you guys don't like Troy Aikman. I get it now. I do. Because watching Herbstreit, listening, I should say, call that Utah-Ohio State game made me want to, hated it. Just because, acts like he's a part of the brotherhood. Like, dude, give me a break. But besides the point, it's a tightrope you walk, but at the same time, you look at the two people that said it, the only one of them that had any stock going into the NFL was Desmond Howard, and he wasn't insane. I mean, Grant coming off a Heisman season the year he goes into the draft, so he had a lot to lose. But when a guy like Herbstreit comes out and says that, it's kind of like, dude, you weren't going to be anything really in the NFL. So I think it's always personal preference. I think it comes down to, I think, your relationship with your guys. Because I know if I had a teammate that was going to be a top 5 pick, I would say it's not worth it. So that's just me personally. But it begs the question of, what do we do to get these guys to play? And I think it's the simple fact of the matter of you got to expand the playoff and make these bowl games more meaningful. I think you expand it to 12. I know there's talk of 6. You got to go to 12. Because I think if you go to 12, you get a full Ohio State team. You get a full, no questions asked, Pitt team, Michigan State team. And you get the games you were advertising and promoting. And it's just more enticing for these guys not to leave, I think. I don't know what you guys think, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's one of the big problems with the difference between college football and college basketball. You look at last year was the lowest rated watch college football national championship ever. It's competitiveness, but you look at the college basketball, they got a 64-team tournament. Everybody loves watching that. And then you look at college football and they got 4 teams and 2 of them are going to win it. So then you expand it to 12 and maybe you get some decent matchups before that. And then, like you said, it adds to the competitiveness, adds to the chance of some teams having a chance there. And then all of a sudden, you get some more high level players playing these bowl games. In terms of like the decision to play or to not play, I mean, we saw players last year opting out of an entire season because of COVID or because of, whatever, or they could say it's because of COVID, but maybe they just didn't want to do it. And then, but you see like these players, they get hurt or they find like something wrong with their heart or something, or they have these injuries and then their draft stock falls. It's just like it's like I was saying with Corral earlier. You see them get hurt, and then you see the reaction. It's like, oh yeah, you want them to play for the team, but as soon as they go out there and they get hurt and they had a really high draft stock and it falls, then you're saying, well, that's a pretty stupid decision to go out there and do that in a game against Baylor. That's like kind of means something, but your team's still going to get the same paycheck for going to that game, and it's not really going to affect you going into next year because you're not going to have Corral anyways. So hopefully it doesn't affect his draft stock, but I just think that I don't have a problem with players opting out of it. If they truly have something that they're saving their bodies up for. And I also don't have a problem with players playing in it if they want to, because that's how they feel. They can do what they want. I've heard an argument like, oh, this is why I should pay the players more because they're the stars of the show, and then they would play in the bowl games more because they're getting paid. I don't know if that's exactly the case, especially for the first round talents. I've also heard some cases about bowl games and why they might suck because of corporate greed, and they all have a sponsor and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know. It's a whole big thing, but I just think my two like rock solid opinions are, I don't care what you do. It's the player's decision, not mine. I can think what I want, but in the end, it's their decision. Whatever they do is probably the smartest for them because they've been talking it through with their coaches, their families, their agents. And then in terms of the playoff, I also think it should be expanded. I personally think it'd be better like 8 because it's still multiples of 2 and then you don't have buys and stuff. And 12 is a little bit big, but if you want to keep it really competitive and get some of these players to play more bowl games, 12 would be smart. And that's probably what they're looking at is 12, not 8. So if it was 12 or 4, I would also choose 12.
Yeah. I think 8's right on the money for me personally. Just because I know players want to play for one thing, and that's to win the national championship. It's as simple as that. So when you're playing in the Sugar Bowl or you're playing in the Rose Bowl now, which isn't in the CFP anymore, and you're not playing for the opportunity to win a national championship, I think the Rose Bowl is the only exception where players will play, where top end NFL talent will play, just because the Rose Bowl is just that big picture. I mean, really, it's almost it's really almost just as important as the national championship every year. They treat it like the national championship. ESPN does every year. I think that's the only exception. So I think if you have 8 teams and then you have the 2 teams in the Rose Bowl, that gives you 10 teams, top 10 teams, most likely, where you have super high end talent playing in all of those games. And you're going to have the top NFL guys because they're going to want to compete for a national championship. They don't want to miss out on that opportunity, that's the whole motivation behind the entire season and why they play the irregular seasons to win the championship. It's pretty straightforward and simple. As far as your decision to play in the current state of bowl seasons, I'm with Luke here. I could care less. If you want to save your body for an NFL pro career, I think, in my opinion, if you are a lock first rounder, you do not play in these games unless you're competing for a national championship. Even if you're a lock second rounder, I wouldn't play personally. If that was me put into that situation, I don't think I would play either. Unless you're doing kind of what Corral did, or I'm playing in the Rose Bowl. I'd play in the Rose Bowl personally. That's the only exception. But yeah, I honestly don't care what you do. I think either way, I think you're making a great decision for you, your family, and your future. Because if you ball out in a bowl game, your stock goes through the roof. Even if you're bad in a bowl game, it doesn't hurt that much depending on how bad you really are. You take a little bit of a risk there, and improving draft stock. And then you have what happened to Corral, where he sprained an ankle, right, if I'm not mistaken. But he's going to be ready for the combine. You do run the risk of injury. But yeah, I think 8's the perfect number. I think you get all the important teams, all the important players playing against each other. We would have saw Ohio State this year, who I thought was a top. They on their resume, they wouldn't have made the CFP no matter what. But I thought they were a top 4 team in college football, even though they lost to Michigan, even though they lost to who was their Oregon, yeah, at the start of the year when Oregon was healthy. So, but yeah, I think 8's right on the money. You get all the top teams with all the top players, and you allow more top end guys to play for national championships, which is what they want at the end of the day. And the NCAA makes out with more money with more games, and the top players get to play for national championships. It's a win-win situation.
And we maybe
sure.
get to watch some competitive semifinals.
Which I don't understand why the NCAA is so stubborn on changing this. Because it's more opportunity for them, which it doesn't compute in my head why they don't, like you said, the NCAA tournament is 64 teams. You have games all day, every day for a month almost.
And that's
it's heaven almost. It's insane. And people watch, like me, last weekend, I sat there for probably 16 hours on a weekend and watched straight college basketball through the whole thing. And I was glued to the TV the entire time. That's what people want to see. I don't think the football one should go to 64. And also, if you expand to 8, you have more parity. Even if guys do get injured, it creates better storylines for the NCAA. Because say like a guy like Bryce Young goes down, now Alabama isn't a guaranteed lock to win the championship anymore. It just creates so much more storyline excitement for what could potentially be a much better CFP if they just think outside the box for once.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hey, our opinions or whatever you want to take them as, like, I was dogging on Herb Street, but all 3 of us have played sports. We are all college students right now. There you go. That's the resume you need to hear from us. But yeah.
That's gonna do it. A little bit of a longer episode, but we ran through 30 plus games. And then talked what is the hot topic right now in college football, which is where pro level talent should play or not. It's as simple as that. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this episode. Subscribe, like, share, comment, all down below in the YouTube video if you're watching that. If you're listening just on audio, Spotify, check us out over there. This episode might be going out to Apple, so this could be our debut on Apple. If you're checking us out there, I'll make sure I'll link that if it's ready. If not, it should be ready by the next episode. But Spotify, Hurdle Sports in the search bar, go down to podcasts. We're the first one that pops up. Super easy to find. Mine and Logan's name is on it. As far as that goes, we got 50 views on the FCS championship preview. So we just want to thank you guys for all the love and support that you guys have been showing us. It's by far and away our biggest episode so far. And we're 53 episodes in now. And we just want to thank you guys for all the support, all the love that you guys have been showing us. And we never thought we'd be doing this for probably it's almost 4 months now, I think. Maybe 3. I think it's 3, almost 3.
About 3.
So yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Luke, for coming on. Go check out his podcast. Mariners Deep Dive. If you're really into baseball, really into the Seattle Mariners, check out him. We'll have all his stuff linked below in the description, including his Instagram if you want to check out that. As far as Instagram goes for the Hurdle Podcast, check out not only just me and Logan individually, but the Hurdle Podcast Instagram, HRDL Podcast. We post every time an episode is going live. And if you hit the notification bell, you got backup for that and you get a little bit extra credit. So yeah, thank you guys for watching the episode. Thanks, Luke, for coming on. But yeah, Luke, Logan, me, I'm Bailey. Peace out, guys. Have a good one.